Hi, thanks for joining me today. Would you mind introducing yourself?
Sure, no problem. My name is Josh DeVincenzo. I am the Assistant Director of Education and Training at the National Center for Disaster Preparedness at Columbia University's Climate School, as well as an adjunct lecturer within the Master's Program for Climate Society. So kind of a long title, but really looking forward to the interview. Thank you.
Yeah, great. So can you talk a bit about your work and what you do at Columbia?
Yeah, I think it's just become a very pivotal time for Columbia, especially. We are about 3 or 4 years into this idea of a climate school, which has been kind of an honor, but also just an exciting place to be a part of, in the sense that the university's kind of identified the fact that a dedicated school is needed to really train researchers, students, practitioners, the whole list, to rise to the challenge of what we're seeing with the impacts of climate worldwide. So a lot of my work is really at that intersection of research, but also education, where we're out in the field with my team at the National Center for Disaster Preparedness, or NCDP, as I'll refer to it, just because it's a really long name, as well as how do we translate that to best equipped graduate students for a variety of different careers and pathways out there to really look at making an impact and addressing these challenges.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that's really important. So can you talk about what you did in college and what you majored in that kind of led up to this job?
Yeah, it's a really interesting question because I have to kind of reflect back on what led me and how to connect those dots a little bit. But in college, I actually came from a business background, so I studied international business at the time, and was really interested more on the economic side as well as business management side of international trade. And so one of the things that I was able to take from that major specifically and translate into what we're looking at now when we talk about disaster impacts, climate adaptation, and the whole list of different things that we're working on in my day to day is that the world is really interconnected. And I think my first language of making sense of how interconnected it was really economics. And at the time, the term globalization, really thinking towards how something that one country does really impacts what another country does. And this, of course, was more in economic terms, but also looking at that where I'm at today, thinking about that in kind of environmental terms and social terms, and thinking about these shocks really that happen with disasters. So I still, to this day, really rely a lot on those business principles as just a way and one framework, as well as when we talk about communicating risk and communicating climate, being able to rely on some of those strategies that I learned all the way back in college around talking about climate in the frame of business leaders and organizations and thinking about institutions. Although involved in a different part of it today, um, those studies were really fundamental and just giving me another kind of toolkit in this broader climate complexity.
Yeah, absolutely. Excuse me. So what did you do in high school that kind of led up to this business major? Did you take the climate angle in high school, or did that start later?
And this is something that hasn't really hit me until recently, but I in high school I actually didn't think I wanted to even be a business major. I was really more involved in the arts and music, and more on the creative side of things, which I could argue have been very important in my day to day today. But really, one of the reflections I had recently is that in my household, I had a father who was influential very much on kind of going down a business route, but then my mom to this day is still an environmental science teacher. So without intentionally doing this, very in an unintentional way, I've kind of combined both of their worlds and kind of how I see things and how I work on things to this point of kind of having that business side, but then also really focused on the environmental side of what we're working on as well. So in high school, I would say, I was able to explore. I had a lot of kind of exploratory clubs and at different levels of engagement, and I wasn't really kind of tied down to one commitment of a career path per se, but all have kind of built into this toolkit that I use today, from either arts and thinking about how things intersect in terms of music and orchestra and choir and all that type of things. But then also, my day to day very much is a combination, again, very unintentionally, of what my mom's world was and what my dad's world is, in the sense of what they're working on.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's definitely a big thing in today's world. It's more kind of like interdisciplinary rather than just pursuing one specific field. So yeah, I think that's great. Can you talk about some experiences that helped you get to where you are, kind of whether that was in college or after, like any research experiences or any like helpful professors or anything like that?
Yeah, I think one of the things that I've noticed and kind of reflecting career pathways and trajectories, and especially in high school and then into college, was just opportunities to take leadership roles. I think that was and very much related to similarly how I got into more of the climate work and what I continue to do was more noticing that, there was either some type of issue or disruption in kind of the culture or the community of the university, for example, and kind of a reluctance from a lot of people to want to get involved in it. And I think from those stages, I was very much kind of, what do I have to lose? Or more so, if I don't jump in, this is just going to continue to be a problem. And that tended to be kind of a theme, especially early on in my career of, let me just jump in because I think we have to do something about this type thing. But those leadership opportunities, especially while you're exploring different careers, exploring kind of different avenues are very important because you get used to, working with a team. You get used to having to navigate different complexities and challenges, making the best of resources you have, trying to get buy-in from your peers or people above you in the hierarchy of things. All those things I was able to start practicing kind of at a young age so that when I was in kind of corporate America for a little bit or then transitioning into academia, I've been able to kind of fail a lot early on in my career in terms of making kind of mistakes, making some strange leadership decisions, or because I was still navigating what it meant to be kind of in a leadership role. But there was always kind of that underpinning of, I need to jump in and do something. And I think climate has been also one of those scenarios where I need to take the kind of the privilege and the skill set that I've been able to acquire throughout my own education and throughout all these experiences and jump in and do something.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's really great that you were able to experience kind of like those leadership things in high school, and that's helping you like in your career now. So, can you talk about some challenges that you faced in pursuing what you're doing now, but also just your general career path out of college?
Yeah, I think out of college, there's definitely some challenges in terms of, or some challenges I face in terms of just figuring out, where do I want to spend most of the time, right? So like your work week is a good chunk of your week. And I think out of college, you kind of get a feel for like how much time you really are kind of working. So making sure it's kind of a right match in terms of what you want to be kind of exerting that energy towards, what you are excited about, what you want to find as a kind of a motivating driver to continue to work and to innovate and be creative with what's on your desk and all those different facets. So for me, one of those challenges was finding that right fit. Where can I continue to grow as a person, but then also grow within an organization, and but then also make progress to a problem or a challenge that was particularly important to me. So, for example, right out of college, I don't think I learned a ton. So that's the one thing. There's no kind of wrong experience because you're always going to be learning and being able to transfer that into your next experiences. I learned a ton, but the opportunity that I was working in was not necessarily something I was extremely excited for the long term. So I think one of the challenges, especially out of college, is going to be knowing when to pivot and how to pivot, building that kind of support network around you that you're going to have people rooting for you if you do pivot. And if it's a very drastic pivot, for example, I left kind of the private sector to come into more of a research academic route, that you're surrounded by people that want the best for you. But it becomes a very kind of internal decision you have to make, and those are very kind of challenging to reflect on. But the end of that story is essentially really finding that place that you want to invest your time, your energy, and really your skill set at that time too. Because I know everyone works hard throughout these career pathways, so making sure that you're applying that to what matters most to you and what makes the most sense for you at that time.
Yeah, definitely. I think, yeah, it's really important to kind of like consider that investment of time. And like you said, like having that support network is really important to help you get there. So just kind of to wrap up, what's some advice that you would offer to high school students who are looking to go into the field that you're in, like kind of research academia in the climate field?
Yeah, I think, and I've been very fortunate enough throughout my career to be able to work a lot with high school students, and when they're really on their way into the field and headed into climate. And I think the reflection that I've seen and that I want to leave as kind of advice is that eventually these students that are very excited to go into climate, they won't be so alone in it. There's going to be a community of folks and organizations and other outlets in which you can engage in climate work with other people that are just as excited as someone might be. I see oftentimes, you'll have like a small subset within a larger school of people that are really excited about environment and excited about climate. If this is a career pathway that you should that someone decides to choose, I would just want to kind of let them know and kind of relieve some of the stress that they won't be alone in this fight. It's not a one versus everybody type fight with climate. It is eventually there is community, there is organization, there is support and resources, and either you're talking a research community, but even a practitioner community. There's a lot of people that are extremely dedicated and passionate about this work. And I know sometimes, especially for younger learners and students that are beginning to start in the space, it might sometimes feel frustrating because you might feel like you're on your own little island, but eventually there's going to be a lot of collective support for your work, for your ideas, and we need all the help that we can. So my advice would just not get too frustrated at first, because the support will be there, and there's a lot of people out there that are working in the same direction.
100%. I think, yeah, that's a big issue with the climate field today in terms of like students who want to go into it. A lot of times, I think people do think that it's kind of like this really insurmountable problem, and it's like you said, like one versus everyone, but it's not really like that. So yeah, I think that's great advice. Um, so yeah, thanks so much for joining me today and doing this interview. It's been really helpful.
Anytime, and good luck with the work and good luck with the project. Appreciate it. Thanks.